You
All right,
are on.
super.
Yes.
Well, welcome everybody to the Professional and Construction Task Force meeting today. My name is Ignacio Malave, the co-chair for today. And I just wanted to welcome everybody today and appreciate you spending time with us. I'd like to start out with the BECO department on the updates on some of the staffing changes. I'd like to start out with Tina. Are you there?
Yes, I am here. Good morning, Ignacio. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. Glad to have you here. I see a lot of people super excited to have such a great attendance to the Joint Task Force meeting. And thank you, Rebecca, for doing a great job getting us all together. So I'm going to cut to the chase, and I would like to give you a couple, actually one update in relation to staffing within the Business Engagement and Compliance Office. I'm proud to announce that we selected Amy Barrett, and I want to introduce Amy Barrett. If Amy, you want to turn on your camera, please? Amy joined our team yesterday, and I'm having her starting today, introducing her and attending her first task force meeting. And she will be taking the role of the Small Business Development Officer position within BECO, and will be managing the DBE Supportive Services Program, the DB Certification Program, along with the on-the-job training Supportive Services Program. Amy brings a significant background in business operations and management, along with experience in compliance and managing programs for a large private organization. So she's bringing a lot of knowledge. I'm extremely excited to welcome Amy to our team, and please join me in welcoming her. So welcome, Amy. Thank you for being here today, and would you like to say a couple words?
Sure, thank you, Tina. Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I look forward to working with all of you and establishing partnerships. So I will definitely be in touch with many of you in the future.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Ignacio. That's all that I have, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. If you guys can turn off your camera, that'd be awesome. So next we'll move forward to Francesca. She's going to give us an update on the DBE program. On any, we've had a lot of changes lately, so she's going to give us an update as far as what kind of changes we have coming down the pipeline. Francesca, are you there? There you are.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Ignacio. Hello. Hi, everyone. I just want to thank our ADOT leadership for supporting today's task force meeting. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Matt, for being here. Thank you, Tina. And welcome, Amy. I am very pleased to welcome you aboard, and I'm looking forward to partnering with you and actually enhancing our outreach efforts to assist our DBE and small business communities. So thank you very much and welcome aboard. So starting off with our supportive services program update and schedule of events, I can't believe we are actually nearing our final DBE task force workshop, but I would encourage everyone to register today and join us on November 2nd, where our topic will be on subcontracting and sub-consulting opportunities for APDM contracts. We do have a planned panel discussion, and we have invited firms such as Hensel Phelps, Kiewit Fan, and our PFF joint venture. So please definitely attend. The discussion will include how their approach and subcontractor selection differs on APDM contracts versus traditional design build procurements, and how and when to approach the primes on APDM projects. So you definitely do not want to miss that. Also, we are shifting gears, so save the date for our upcoming 2021 DBE and Small Business Conference. It will be held virtually online on December 7th and 8th, and the registration actually goes live next week, and it's free to all attendees. And some reasons and benefits for attending as a small business, as a DBE, and a stakeholder would be to be able to leverage all the benefits from our speed appointments with buying agencies and with primes. There'll be some virtual networking with agencies and community partners, as well as other small businesses and primes. And then we're also going to feature a new and potential DBE orientation with our BECO staff. And it's going to have a little mix up this year because we're going to be able to explain some changes that are going on within certification and some compliance issues that we want to bring up. So that's definitely something great for any new and potential DBE to attend. Also, just to stay in the know and make sure you're keeping current with any industry and upcoming DBE supportive services events and news, please make sure you are enrolled into our DBE supportive services communications. That's where you'll get solicitations for upcoming work, and you'll be able to see our biweekly newsletter as well. And then also, if there is any assistance you would need for various business topics, such as procurement, contracts and specs, supportive services, you can enroll on our online Small Business Resource Center application. And that is the one-stop shop where you would get assistance with various business challenges from one-on-one meetings that we will conduct, and we will partner you with a business expert to help you assist you in those areas. And that's actually all I have today.
Great, thank you, Francesca. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So next I'd like to introduce the State Engineer's Office. I'd like to introduce Steve Boshan. He's going to give us an update on the procurement process. Steve?
Morning, everybody. And Amy, welcome. Your first day was yesterday, so that's awesome. So glad to have you. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this works, Rebecca. Oh. Uh-oh. Dang it. I hate when this happens. I'm not seeing my presentation.
Do you have it pulled up? This is Rebecca. Oh, you got it. You got this.
Sometimes I'm just brain dead. So I can't do anything without a presentation, Rebecca. So again, good morning. I'm going to start with the construction cost index. So if you were at the Rural Transportation Conference, you probably heard Dallas talk about this. Since 2016, we have increased, and it's gone from, we were really happy. It kind of went to 1.44, but it is now 1.6. So it's not showing on here, but that's what we're reflecting right now. So that's a 60% increase. A lot of folks wonder, why do we have less projects? Well, this is directly why we have less projects. Next thing, you've heard about supply chain issues. This is something that my wife turned me on to because she does do a lot of supply chain stuff with where she works, and that's Best Western. These are all of the shipping containers, or actually the boats that are sitting off of Long Beach right now that cannot dock. So I picked one up, you know, that little white dot out in the middle of the ocean. That's a pretty big container. Now, with the recent change for Long Beach becoming a 24/7 port, before only Savannah was a 24/7, it might help, but now there is a trucker shortage, and there's actually a truck shortage also, because some of the places where they have these ports, the roads aren't in that good a shape, so they're losing chassis. Kind of interesting problem. So you think you fix it by going 24/7 with a port, and then you have other supply chain issues. So that does creep into our industry a little bit. So what I was supposed to talk about is procurement. So here's some of our current construction ads. All I did was take screenshots from, you know, what we have on our ADOT website. So these shouldn't be a surprise to you. These are our current construction advertisements. Our current consultant ads, we just have one. I do want to talk about this one a little bit. We've got an environmental on-call that's on the streets right now. We previously selected 2, and only 1 was actually competing through our task orders. So because of that, it was becoming a monopoly. We didn't think that was fair. So that's why we're putting this out again. I think we're going to select some. I don't know if it's 1 or 2, but I'm going to let Cedric talk about that. Now, here's the exciting part. We do have a bunch of projects that are coming up. We haven't advertised them yet, but these are the ones that you should be looking at. I-19 down in Tucson, Irvington TI, 347 down in the Maricopa area. 101 and I-10 is an interesting one because it would allow kind of a direct connection to Tolleson, which they have been missing for a long time. So this is something that we work with MAG and Tolleson to do. It'll provide that direct connection to 91st Avenue. Big project though, because that is one of our directional TIs. Project development on call, another one of our big ones. We've had that usually for a 5-year period, but again, I'll let Cedric talk about that. That's where we select up to 20 consultants to deliver our program. And then I-10 202 to Riggs is upcoming, US 180 up in the north. And then, we love our roundabout. So a 69-169 roundabout is upcoming. So what happens if we get additional federal funding? It'd be pretty cool, but the construction cost index said we're 60% more. If we do get more funding the way it's looking, we might get a 30% increase. So we're still kind of treading water. The question I get a lot is, what would we do with it? What we do with it is probably hit pavement rehab, because that's where we're really not sustainable right now in terms of what we've been doing. You've seen the MAG system, the rubberized asphalt that did outlive its useful life. We got way more than we thought we would, is deteriorating. So the question I answer is, if we get more federal funding, most, if not all, would be spent on pavement rehab. And that's all I have, and welcome, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions out there that you'd like to ask Steve? Okay. All right, thank you, Steve.
Bet.
Okay, next I'd like to bring on Cedric Johnson regarding the ECS department update. Cedric, are you there?
I am here.
Great.
There we go. Welcome to all. Happy to participate and be a part of this today. Currently we have, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right. Currently we have, as Steve had just shown, I have the same screens that he had, so I won't pop up any screens. But we have, on the upcoming advertisement, we had 7, and on the current advertisement, 2022-007, we had that one on-call. Normally, these would be done by Greg, so I actually did not do my homework on those. Just found out this morning that he wasn't going to be here. He had a conflict with another meeting. But I can entertain any questions that anyone has regarding those. But other than that, don't have a lot coming from ECS today.
Do we have any questions for Cedric this morning? Wow, the crowd's silent this morning.
Yeah, it's early.
All right, Cedric. Well, thank you for coming on board. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to, is it Rebecca?
Yes. Yes,
okay.
I'm here.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. So we will, thank you, Ignacio. Thank you, Cedric. Thank you to all of our ADOT representatives who provided updates for us today. Those are always really critical. We always want to hear those kind of questions or presentations and the updates. Those are so important to hear. All right, so I am going to take on the topic today, and we're going to go through APDM, so Alternative Project Delivery Methods. I'm going to start with a short overview, and I like to say this is in layman's terms. This is from an industry person, but not somebody who's so deep into it that I get way into the minutia. So I will very much stick to layman's terms, and then I will invite our panel, which is Eric Froberg with the City of Phoenix and Matt Mall with ADOT, and we're going to ask some questions like, how's the agency perspective to really get into how the different public owners determine what project type to use, what delivery method to use. So with that, I will share my screen. I am very similar to Steve. I really like to have something visual. So if you have any trouble seeing anything, please do use the chat. If you can't hear me, definitely use the chat. I do have that up so I can see what's going on. So like I said, this is an overview and definitions of our different delivery methods, our different project delivery methods in layman's terms. So let's jump into it. So this is the traditional low bid. We're going to start with traditional low bid. So what is that? That is the most widely used procurement method. So I actually did this exact same overview, I think it was last week or the week before, for builders exchanges across the nation and into Canada. And what I learned from them, I asked everybody, who uses these delivery methods? Who uses low bid? Everybody uses low bid. That is the most common kind of tender or procurement type contract types for public agencies. When we got into these other ones, pretty much anything other than low bid, it was astounding, like 5 had access to them. So 5 out of about 30 builders exchanges across the nation and into Canada even had legislation enabling any other delivery method. So a couple notes on this one. This is a low price win. So we're all pretty familiar with this one. It is the most widely used. It is considered, why do people use this one? It is considered the best use of taxpayer dollars. So when you're looking at procuring something using taxpayer dollars, we want to make sure we're wise and we are efficient with our use of taxpayer money. And that kind of pushes a lot of projects into low bid. This is the longest time from start to finish. So when you're looking at something like a project, could take months or years sometimes. It does take the longest if you have to complete every step before you can move on to the next. So your design documents have to be complete, they have to be accurate. They actually have to be better on a low bid project than the other ones that we'll get into, because you need that. Because again, if you're bidding plans and specs, you definitely need to have really good design documents, and it does take the longest. It does also provide the highest risk for change orders, delays, claims, litigation. So that would maybe lead us into thinking, hey, we want something better. Like the industry wants something better. Our public owners deserve a better relationship with our consultants or our contractors. So why do we do this? We really wanted less contention. So a more collaborative environment, wanted to get away from claims, litigation, change orders. And then the industry really wanted to say, hey, we're better. Like we provide a good service. We provide a good quality product. We're a great firm. We want to be able to be selected based on quality and past project performance. So if we're doing a really good job, we want to have a better chance of winning the next one. That makes a lot of sense. They shouldn't get beat by somebody who just has a sharper pencil. Or when I was in college, we had this story about I went to college in East LA, and we had this story that there was a contractor who the first place that a bid set of documents went was the legal department, because they could analyze the plans and specs and figure out immediately or very quickly how much they could win in change orders based on how poor the documents were. So that was kind of the horror story in California, in Southern California, where I was in college, was like, yeah, that's how they win, is because they just, find the bid price, subtract out whatever legal said that they were going to get, and that's how they kept winning projects. And then, they would just change order it to death or claim it to death. And they were very successful. So that's not the environment that a lot of people want to work in. So that really led us to enable legislation that allows public entities to use some other contract method other than low bid. So very brief history, it passed in about 2000. There have been several major updates to our enabling legislation. If you really want to get into the legalese, ARS Title 41 is kind of the place to start. So there are some other ARS titles that deal with that. You can just do a quick search and you can kind of come up with all the different steps. So, all right, let's move on. Construction manager at risk. This is also known as CMAR. Up in Oregon, it's called CMGC. That's another place that I worked as a contractor, or CMAR, CMR, kind of all the same things. What that really looks like is it is a negotiated contract type. It is the cost of the job plus overhead and fee. So those are kind of the steps, or those are kind of the major breakdown. It can enable you to save a lot of time, because you can select your general contractor before the design is complete, because you're selected on qualifications. So you're looking at something like a firm history, you're looking at that past performance, you're looking at being evaluated on your key staff. This can be a 1-step or a 2-step selection process. And I put a little asterisk there on that 4th bullet down, or 4th line item down, only because I think we're kind of almost enabling like a 3-step selection process. Recently, there was a qualified low bid that was recently enacted. I think it was 2 years ago. And what that looks like is you're always doing a written proposal first, often doing an interview. That would be your 2nd step. And so with that 3rd step that they did, it was, you could be deemed qualified based on a written proposal. Then you do have the interview, which is kind of that softer skill of, how does the team chemistry work? How do they demonstrate that they want the job, and that they demonstrate they really thought through the nuances of how they would deliver this job for this owner. And then the 3rd step can be a price or a bid. So I've seen that happen a few times. I don't know how well those projects have gone, but it is a little bit, you can almost have like a 3-step selection process there with that written proposal, the interview, and then even the bid price. And that is for public owners, that is enabled in our legislation. So then our subcontractors also have to be deemed qualified. That was one of those major updates that we did to our enabling legislation. Is the subcontracting community said, hey, we shouldn't be judged just on price. We want to be, evaluated, and qualified subcontractors should really be the ones that are doing these jobs as well on these negotiated projects. And then, like I said, we want to have an open book. So usually an open book, transparent cost with the owner. I would say that's not always the case. I've done some research, and it definitely depends on how the contract is written, whether the owner is going to require the general contractor to use an open book methodology. It does have a lot less risk for change orders, a lot less risk for claims litigation, and creates a lot more collaborative environment. If you're bringing the general contractor in, if you're bringing in your key subs ahead of time before the design is complete, you can really do some constructability reviews. You can really get in there and say, hey, we've done these other projects using this method or this product, whatever it is, and hopefully get the owner a better end quality project. Moving on-calls and job order contracts. These are very popular, especially with our larger public owners. They use them extensively. So a large owner, somebody like a large school district, ASU, U of A, NAU, there are large higher ed owners, large cities. They have a lot of work, a lot of need, and a lot of those projects are small. So think like small renovations, small TIs, electrical on-call, roofing on-call. They are based on qualifications. So you set up kind of an on-call contract based on qualifications. Sometimes they do use a price book, which kind of, again, speeds up how fast they can get to project execution. And then if you do perform well on these jobs and on-calls, the intent is that, you keep getting more repeat work. So it is kind of the smaller, some of them can be service type contracts as well. And then we do also see a lot of use of cooperatives on these as well. All right, design build. This is highly based on qualifications. So it's really interesting that the owner only has one contract. It's typically the general contractor that takes the lead and then hires the design firm underneath them to deliver the project. So subs are often involved earlier. They can be involved, or they can be selected based on qualifications alone. And then everybody designs to meet a budget, to meet a project budget. I would say the one maybe con I've heard from people kind of consistently is that the owners do feel that sometimes their control or their input on the design process is a little bit less using this. Again, your general contractor is your lead. Your design firm is actually contractually responsible to your general contractor. So the owner feels like they sometimes have less input on the design side. And then I put this one in there. I know it's not a delivery method, but I will say there's a bunch of different other things too. So IPD, so integrated project delivery, and P3. At some level, it all deals with transferring risk and benefit. So the end users, the benefits to the end user always have to be demonstrated. And then we kind of have a bunch of different flavors. So design, build, finance, maintain, operate. There can be kind of some mix of those. And then IPD, that's not really used on the public side here. It is used on the private side. So I don't believe, and maybe Eric and Matt can explain if public owners can use IPD. In Arizona, I don't believe it is enabling legislation has been approved yet. So with that, that is actually the end of my slide deck. So let me stop sharing. And I would invite Eric and Matt, if you can turn on your cameras and unmute yourselves. Welcome, good morning. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Okay, now just straight up history. You guys know each other, right? For a while?
Yeah, we do. I was.
So how far do you go back?
Yeah, I was actually gonna say something. Hey, Matt, it's been a long time, but I was gonna. I mentioned to Rebecca that you have two Globe Tigers here giving you the presentation today. Matt and I went to high school together, so it's been quite a while since we've seen each other. But we had similar, did a lot of stuff together, friends in high school and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we've known each other a real long time.
And we both graduated from the U of A.
There you go.
Roughly around the same time. Yep. So.
Perfect. Okay, great. So I expect a little bit of,
apologies if there's any Sun Devils on the line.
Yeah, right.
There are always Sun Devils on the line. This is Arizona. There's nothing that will bring out the witty comebacks faster than like going U of A versus ASU. I think it's pretty entertaining. So first question, did I get anything wrong, or do you want to clarify anything? that I just kind of gave, like I said, that overview in layman's terms.
Yeah, no, I thought you did a good job. I'm kind of just with as thorough a job as you did, wondering why you even needed Matt and I here. So it seemed like you got all that stuff kind of squared away.
Oh no, that was just setting it up. That was just teeing it up for the discussion. Now we get to actually ask some questions. I mean, understanding what they are is fine, but we want to understand how public owners actually implement these. So Eric, I'm going to come to you first. Based on the things that I've said, I kind of went through JOC and OnCall, went through CMAR, went through design build, and then it's also IPD and P3. What does the city of Phoenix use? Like what kind of contract types do you use on your project?
So aside from P3 and, you know, we use all of the ones that you talked about at the beginning, you know, design build. Of course, we use design bid build, low bid. Everybody uses that. Like you mentioned, we do use CMAR quite a bit. We use JOCs an awful lot here. We, you know, and I did see on one of your slides, the ARS Title 34, that kind of dictates Matt's world with ADOT. If you wanted to talk more about the local agencies, it's ARS Title 34. So we have our own, but they're very similar. But there are some things that the state can do that the cities can't do. But generally they follow the same kind of procedures. But no, we use JOCs a lot. Per Title 34, you know, we can, per legislation, but it was a $1 million limit per JOA, or as local agencies allow. So the City of Phoenix currently has a $4 million limit on our JOAs. So we can do relatively good sized projects with our JOAs or JOCs. But we use the main four delivery methods that you talked about there.
Okay, so I'm just going to clarify. The $4 million limit looks like a per task assignment or per task order within that existing job order contract. So your master agreement probably has some kind of upper limit, but for individual tasks, you can actually go up to 4 million. And that was just with the City of Phoenix, because you're right, by state law, you cannot do 4 million.
Correct. Yep. So we will have, and I do, as we set the JOC limits, or our JOCs, the overall contract, let's say it has a $25 million limit. Those, you know, we could do up to $4 million. Now, if I have some of the smaller JOCs that are more discipline specific, like electrical work or those types of things, if that JOC, the overall contract, has let's say a $5 million limit, it doesn't make sense to have a $4 million then task under that. So we make sliding scales, and under that case, maybe we would go to the $1 million kind of JOA. The intent is to do kind of the right size projects with our JOCs.
Sure. Okay, Matt, how about you? What does ADOT use in terms of different project delivery methods?
Similar to the City of Phoenix, we use design build, CMAR, P3. We use JOC on a very limited basis, just, you know, because it's not super suitable to the complexity of most of our projects. And we just typically run those through design bid build. I believe our facilities groups uses job order contracting quite a bit. But as far as transportation projects, we have very limited utilization of that method.
Okay. And is that just because you're looking for the best value? You feel a design bid build, you know, in my opinion, design bid build fits really well with very well defined, very clear scope, less risk for, you know, unforeseen conditions or unforeseen, you know, whatever happens.
Correct. And Rebecca, similar to Eric, when you were done with your slides, I was kind of wondering why Eric and I are here. So you did a great job. You're the ones with the knowledge. You did a great job of summarizing each delivery method and some of the pros and cons. So.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. But I want to know what you guys think. Like, you're here because you sit in the chair and you have, like, you know, the agency perspective. I just kind of see a lot of things. So
I did want to clarify something as far as qualifications for regular low bid or design bid build work for ADOT. The contractors to bid as a prime with ADOT do have to go through a pre-qualification process. It's not necessarily just open to anyone. So.
Yeah, good point.
Similar with,
yes, I have.
City of Phoenix is similar too, but they don't actually get pre-qualified, but we have the, we make sure that they're responsive, and we do kind of the investigation to make sure that they're responsive and they're qualified and those types of things after the fact. So it's similar in that it's just not just anyone could have the project. You have to be responsible as well.
Okay, so responsive, let's touch on that just for a second, just because I want to make sure we give like a really good, kind of exposure to the different contract types. So responsive or pre-qualified to bid includes, do you guys have any rough idea? Like I've looked at it just briefly, your firm, you have to have, a valid contractor's license. Like you have to be a valid company, probably have to have bonding in place. Tell me what else would go into just the pre-qualification step of being able to bid on the low bid. Can you guys touch on that just briefly? Nat, can I go to you
so
first?
for ADOT, it's an official process and you have to be pre-qualified based on the type of work. There's an application process. There's a panel that looks at previous work experience of that contractor, what types of projects, they've completed, what their basically liquid assets are, cash on hand. So it's financial as well as competence to do the work.
Okay. And Eric, how about you? What does it look like for the City of Phoenix?
Yeah, ours isn't nearly that in-depth and complicated. I wish it was. Maybe we'll go that way. Ours is more just, do you have a valid contractor's license? Are you authorized to work in the state? Some of the easier check boxes. Do you have bonding capacity? Those types of things. But yeah, we don't get quite as in depth. That's a good idea. Maybe I'll talk with Matt a little bit and see if we can get Phoenix to do that kind of stuff too.
So key question, if a sub got a low bid contract, they're deemed, pre-qualified and able to do business with ADOT, with the City of Phoenix, and they were really good, like I described that firm in Southern California, really good at change ordering you guys, because maybe design documents weren't where they needed to be. Would that preclude them from bidding on the next one if it was a low bid job? Nope. Okay, that's what I was trying to go for, and then we're going to get into, the alternative. So everything other than a low bid contract, it is intended to kind of provide a more collaborative, more work friendly, better relationship between the design firm, the owner, and the contractor. I'm going to ask you guys specifically, give me additional pros and cons based on each contract type. So Eric, I'm going to come to you first. CMAR, what do you see as the pros, and do you have any cons? That's kind of, in my opinion, many people's favorite contract type. Can you give us a couple additional pros, and if you can, come up with at least one con to that contract type?
Yeah, so for CMAR specifically, so the one thing that's super helpful to us, or a big pro for us, is kind of the design assist that the contractor will provide during pre-construction services, right? Being able to tell the designer or help the designer, like, if you did it this way, or if you do it that way, it'd be easier for us to do staging or shoring, or, some part of the project, depending on the project. So design assist is a big part of it. Real-time pricing is a real good pro for us, in that, when you are doing, and you talked about low bid is this kind of long drawn out process where you could design it 2 years ago and you had an engineer's estimate, and now 2 years later bidding it, you have no idea what the pricing would look like, from 2 years ago to now. So to be able to have some real-time pricing as you're going along during pre-construction services is good. And then the GMP, right? Guaranteed max price. We kind of like that too, right? It locks them in, lets us know, helps us allow to better make sure our budgets are in line. So the GMP and negotiating that is a good plus for us. The timing, or some of the cons of CMAR is negotiating the GMP, right? Sometimes that can be painful. So it's the pro and a con type of a thing. So sometimes that can be tough as you're talking about, you're really talking about pricing risk at that point. And as you're going through, right, at 30, 60, 90, whenever these GMPs or pre-GMPs are coming in, the risk is supposed to get less, right? And then you get to the end, you should have a pretty good number. So sometimes negotiating that, there is higher upfront costs in the project because you are paying a contractor to do the design assist. So there is, it is a small, it's usually a small dollar amount, but you're paying for something that in some of the other delivery methods you don't have. So there's an upfront cost. really kind of one of the cons too is depending on the type of project is really the timing of when do you bring the CMAR in? When do you bring the contractor in? Do you need them at 30? Do you need them at 60? Do you need them at pre-design? I mean, it's kind of trying to figure out based on the type of project you have is bringing them in at the right time to limit those upfront costs. So CMAR is good and we like CMAR, but there are some, you have to know and use the time appropriately, right? Because you're gonna pay the contractor to watch your designer design. So you want to make sure that you're getting the best value for the buck.
So I don't think I've actually heard that before. Matt, I'm coming to you in just a second, but Eric, I don't think I've actually heard that before in any kind of public discussion at least, which is the deliberations of when does a CMAR need to be selected on, during the design process. Can you tell me maybe just one or two sentences about how you determine the right time to secure a CMAR based on different things, based on the nuances of the job?
Yeah, so really it just comes down to kind of the complexity of the job. If it is a project where the design is pretty straightforward, but there's one or two aspects of it that you want to get the contractors kind of input on, that you can bring them in a little later. But if there's one where it's in an area where traffic control is going to be a major issue, or shoring, or you're going to be, having, bridge work over live roadways, or, that detours and all that kind of stuff, right? The more complex the project, the sooner you would want to bring them in. Now, if it's just a project like a water line project where, you're not necessarily, it's not all that complicated, that it's the installation of the water line, maybe that's the complicated part, but not necessarily all the other things that go with it. You could maybe bring them in a little later because at the beginning, you're just getting the design of the water line done, right? And then you need them at the end, more near the end. So it really is, we strategically try to decide when to bring them on, because if you don't need them at 30%, why do you want to pay them between 30 and 60%, right? So, but we want to make sure that we're utilizing their expertise as best we can throughout the project as well.
Okay. Matt, can you add anything to what Eric kind of said specific to CMAR? Can you give us any additional pros for the owner in choosing a CMAR as a delivery method? And then do you have any cons that haven't been mentioned yet?
So, one of the biggest advantages to CMAR for us is that typically we end up choosing that delivery method when we're looking for innovation on a project. Perhaps it's a newer type of infrastructure that needs to come in, and we're looking for contractors' assistance on how do we get from point A to point B. We look for that innovation, the contractor's input on the most efficient way to complete that project. A con would be if you don't get any innovation, right? And we end up delivering the same project that we would through design, bid, build, then that would be a huge con. The other con is similar to what Eric said when it gets down to brass tacks and you have that GMP, assigning risk and assigning appropriate costs to that risk. And that's really what it comes down to with that GMP. So, and it can.
Okay, so I have a follow-up. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It can be a healthy discussion when it comes to the GMP, so.
All right, lively, I bet. All right, I have a follow-up question to you. You said you were looking for innovation on CMAR projects. Do you really hit on that in the proposal stage, like in the written RFQ document? Do you make that like a part of your RFQ that says, hey, we really want innovation on this project, show me, past examples of something very innovative, very different than what the owner was expecting? Is that something that you really push in the written proposals? I don't propose on ADOT projects. I don't propose on City of Phoenix projects either, but that hasn't been something that I've seen a lot of.
So Rebecca, I think we try, but I also don't think there's ever been a perfect solicitation or a perfect project. So there's always room to improve.
Okay, fair. All right, I mean, put you on the spot there, but yeah, it's definitely something that I think people would love to demonstrate. I mean, the industry wants to demonstrate competence and innovation, like they all say they do. So giving them a chance to shine, I think would be great. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Design build. Matt, I'm coming to you first on this one. Can you give me some pros to using the design build contract type and at least one con?
So obviously for ADOT, design build is perceived as a quicker delivery method. So that's a pro, is you can get a contractor and a designer out there rather quickly, you know, design and construction proceed concurrently. So we see that as a pro to that delivery process when we have a project that we want to deliver rather quickly. A con to that is, as an owner, you have limited visibility of right-of-way and utility impacts. And I would say that historically, those two areas have presented the most challenges to us as an owner, is just predicting what those right-of-way and utility impacts might be and how to mitigate those, because it goes quick, and right-of-way and utilities don't always necessarily move quickly. So
I've often seen those go first because they do take the longest, and they seem to be the most thorny or hairy components of projects. So next question to you, Matt, I have a follow-up question on that one. Design build contract types. Do you see them as a price selection, and do you use it like let's say you have, like, I use round numbers, so let's say you have a $50 million budget for a specific project. Do you ask the design build team in the proposal stage to, hey, this is our budget? I guess what I'm asking is there a price component to your selection process on a design build contract? There's still words out.
So it's price and it's time, right? It's A plus B.
Okay, perfect. And then Eric, same question to you. Pros and cons of design build from the city of Phoenix, and then definitely include one con.
Yeah, so we don't do nearly as many at the city of Phoenix. We don't do nearly as many design builds as ADOT does. Design build is very much, as Matt mentioned, kind of right up their alley of kind of big infrastructure type of projects, horizontal projects, those types of things. But some of the things that, you know, from the administrative side, being that it's a single contract is nice, right? Where you don't have to, you don't, with CMAR, you know, you have a contract with the designer and with the contractor separately. You know, it's nice administratively to just have one contract with just the team. The team concept is good too. That's a good pro, right? Because you know that sometimes under CMAR, you're putting a designer and a contractor together that maybe haven't worked together or don't work together well. But under design build, they're coming to you as one team. So in theory, they selected each other, and, you know, they should be able to work well together. So that's a good pro. And Matt talked about the fast tracking, right? It should be kind of the fastest and most streamlined of them. A con of it, at least from our standpoint, and maybe because we're just not as proactive as we should be, is the bridging document, right? We just don't do a good job of planning ahead enough to get a bridging document together to even start a design build procurement. So ADOT's real good at that. They've got that down to a science. So kind of the bridging document is one. And then kind of going back to another con is to the single contract, is you do lose some kind of checks and balances too in between. With CMAR, when you control both contracts, you have more direct impact on what each of them are doing. When you have a single contract, sometimes it can be hard for, at least I've noticed, can be hard for the agency to actually get to the designer because your contract is with the contractor. So when you really want to have that kind of input with the designer, the contractor can be like, yeah, we'll talk to them. Don't worry about that type of thing. So that kind of checks and balances between designer and contractor and what each of them think is important. Sometimes you could lose that in a design build. Now, I don't know that happens a lot. It's just something that could happen.
Okay, I have two questions for you. Do you also, just like Matt said, use the price plus time, A plus B, on your design build procurement? So
depends on the type of project. Again, we're not since 2000, we've done less than 1% of our projects design build. So we hardly ever do them. And the ones that I know that we've done were basically price-based. There wasn't a schedule component to it. We basically told them, your schedule is whatever, 365 days. What's the price with that schedule? So we didn't get to the point of saying, you know, A plus B, like Matt talked about.
Okay. Second question to you. What is that bridging document you talked about? I'm not actually familiar with that at all.
Yeah. So, and maybe it's called something different, and Matt may be able to talk to that a little bit more. Basically, the 15-ish, 30% design or a concept report or something that you put out to the design builders teams, their teams, to say, we want you to build this, right? And you give them general parameters of, you tell them, okay, your project limits are from A to B, and we generally want it to be this wide, and here are the limitations on bridge spans, or, you know, whatever, right? It's this general kind of upfront, it's the playbook, it's the set of rules that you want all the design teams to start with. Now, then they go through and they do their ATCs and all of those other things to improve upon, but it does take time, effort, and money to put together the bridging document. And I don't know, Matt, if it's called something different, but that's what we used to call it when we were working on them.
Matt, do you have anything to add? What is that bridging
document?
Yeah,
it's going to be your basic solicitation with the design requirements and the parameters that your design builder has to, you know, the lines they're boxed in to. And that can be a pro or a con, because like you mentioned, owners can feel like they have limited influence on the design. So you have to be very careful with your reference documents and your design requirements, because it's always unfortunate when you end up with overlapping or conflicting design requirements, and that there can be some ambiguity there. So it's really important to put in that effort up front to make sure you're asking what you think you're asking for.
Okay, perfect. All right, moving on. We're going to go on calls and job order contracts. Pros and cons. Eric, I'm coming to you first.
So lots of pros for these. The city does a lot of these, and I have later on you may ask, and I keep referencing this other little graphic that I have put together. So like since 2000, when ADMP came in, about 2/3 of our projects have gone JOC as the number of, just purely the number of projects, but that equates to only about 14% of the budget. So you can see that they're smaller, more numerous projects. So JOCs are real good for us in that, you know, they're the fastest way for us to procure the actual work. Once we get a JOC contractor on board with, let's say, a $25 million limit or whatever it is, we could call them today and they could start working 2 days from now, right? Because the contract's already in place. We just negotiate the scope and fee. They go out, they do the work. So, you know, that's good. We like that it's relationship based, right? Because it's not, generally, they're not selected on price. We do have some 2-step JOCs. Those are for real repetitive work that we do just over and over, where we're concerned kind of about the price. But generally, it's relationship based. They are long-term contracts, right? Generally, we have 3-year contract with a 2-year extension, either 2 1-year extensions or a 2-year extension. But it's the fastest. Sometimes, you know, one of the cons, and it'll sound funny saying that our limit is sometimes $4 million, but sometimes the limitation of the JOC is sometimes the size of the project that we can do under that. Now, some of the smaller agencies always roll their eyes, you know, when I say, well, we can't do a $5 million project on the JOC, they're like, we can't do a $2 million project. So, but at the end of the day, right, when we have our CIP is pretty large. So to be able to deliver that number of projects is good. Sometimes the size limitation is challenging. And one of the cons too, that just being honest with who we are and the staff that we have, is sometimes the knowledge of our own staff about the type of construction or the work that needs to be done, right? So knowledge of the owner can sometimes be a con, right? The JOCs aren't the magic wand that you wave and somehow things just get fixed. I mean, you still have to have know-how behind what you're actually trying to fix. But they're good for maintenance work. They're good for non-routine maintenance work. I got to put that out there because Title 34 doesn't allow it for routine maintenance, but it's good for repetitive work. It's good for small projects. It helps us deliver pretty quick.
Okay, now I do have a question from the audience. I want to catch right here, specific to you, Eric. Do you get any friction or any pushback from the industry with using job or contract specifically as opposed to CMAR, low bid, or design build? Do you get any pushback?
So I saw that, and thank you, Mr. Boshin, for the question. No, the AGC and ACMA, and I know Ricardo's on the call here. Generally, the contractors really like our JOC contracts. They're selected primarily, most of them, right? 80% of them are selected based on qualifications. So they like that. So they're not selected on price. But they like that it helps, you know, the feedback that we got is it helps us to deliver projects faster, right? And then they don't have to put down, if you go low bid on all of our 8,000 projects that we put out on JOC, right? It's just, everyone would be all balled up in submitting bids over and over and over again, right? This is, you get selected, and we have some JOCs that have the overall contract JOCs that have 50 or more job order agreements or the small tasks under them. So that's 50 plus low bid things that they didn't have to bid, right? They got selected for it, and we got it a lot faster, moved on, and you know, but it's relationship based too, right? So we know that they are going to give us a fair price because they're going to want to get selected the next time to do those 50 plus task orders. Now, some of them aren't that big,
Sure.
but some of them are.
Okay, Matt, talk to me about pros and cons of using on-call and JOCs for ADOT.
You know, we don't use a lot of them. So I would say the pro, listening to Eric, would be convenience. It sounds like in some circumstances that might be the easy button. Not the solution to every problem, certainly. But for us, it's unrealistic for the larger projects based on complexity or dollar amount that we do. And for non-routine maintenance, we tend to go through our procurement office and solicit through procurement and use that delivery method, and it actually works pretty well. So,
okay. So one thing I'm going to make kind of a big conclusion is it definitely depends on internal constraints as well. So if ADOT has a large and sophisticated, very efficient procurement group that's able to, you know, efficiently move through procurement as a low bid delivery method. Eric, I know you have procurement groups and whatnot, but maybe it's more efficient based on volume and complexity of the job to move those through on-calls. Would you guys agree with that kind of conclusion that I'm jumping to there?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, some of it would just come down to our agencies have similar but different missions, right? Like ADOT is very transportation focused, and I know they have facilities and those types of things too, right? But I don't know that ADOT has a lot of libraries and senior centers and, you know, housing developments. And, you know, so the city of Phoenix, right, there's just a different mission than what ADOT has. So ADOT that's why design build is a big part of what ADOT does because of the mission that they have, where JOCs kind of more tenant improvements, smaller things, you know, those types of things lend to local agencies like the city of Phoenix using JOCs a little bit more.
Nat, anything to add to that one?
Well, just like I mentioned earlier, you know, our facilities group that does renewal projects on our building facilities, and they use JOC quite a bit more. But like Eric mentioned, we're a very large agency, and that kind of happens over here, and I'm over here. So.
Gotcha. I don't know. I like talking to both of you guys because you are the two largest, you know, public agencies in terms of a 5-year capital spend. So you guys are by far the largest. Like, you guys dwarf everybody. And I'm sorry, Matt, Eric actually overtook you about 3 years ago. City of Phoenix is the largest 5-year capital improvement plan by quite a bit. So lots of funds rolling through capital improvement plans there. All right. Did you guys want to add anything? I want to move on to our next kind of question, but do you have any other pros and cons specific to design bid build, our low bid, that you want to bring forward to the group? Like, what is the benefit? What are the pros and cons to your agency specifically on design bid build? Matt, can I come to you first?
Well, I mean, obviously it's competitive pricing for a known scope. We pre-qualify our contractors. It's a great delivery method for a lot of our work. A con would be the delivery time. Like Eric mentioned, sometimes once a project hits the street, you know, we make an attempt to make that engineer's estimate current and based on, you know, current economic conditions and pricing. Steve Boshin mentioned the construction cost index a little earlier. One of the drawbacks is there's not a lot of opportunity for innovation. or cost savings. You know, we can use value engineering on projects, and we certainly have, but you know, the design is basically fixed at that point, you know, and if it's a known scope, known design project, it's a great delivery method. So.
Okay, perfect. All right. Gonna ask, how do you guys go about determining what is the right contract delivery method for your project? Matt, can I come to you first? Like talk to me about ADOT's process. Like, how do you determine like design bid, build, design build, CMAR, all those different flavors of contract types you have at your disposal? How do you decide that?
So we assign priorities to a project, such as project complexity, budget, schedule, risk, opportunity for innovation, and they go into a matrix and they're each weighted, right? And then we put together a panel, and the panel scores the project based on each of those categories, and it returns a recommendation based on that matrix, and then the panel moves that decision forward as a recommendation for that delivery method. And obviously we don't put all of our projects through that. It's typically the larger, more complex projects, you know, for our run-of-the-mill design bid build. That's, I guess, what you would call the default delivery method.
I was going to ask that, like, how many line items do you guys go through, and how fast can that panel turn through those? So, okay, perfect. Thank you. Eric, talk to me about the City of Phoenix process. Like, how do you guys determine delivery methods on projects?
It's not nearly as organized and elaborate as ADOT's. That's pretty fantastic, Matt. The panel that makes that decision generally is a panel of maybe one over here at the City of Phoenix. The different client departments will come with an idea of, hey, you know, we think it should be CMAR, it should be JOC, or it should be whatever. And usually I just go along with, okay, yeah, that makes sense, but sometimes they don't. But really, you know, it just comes to the City of Phoenix. It just comes down to we use our best judgment just based on scope, schedule, and budget, right? So the budget's the easy one. If the projects are over $4 million, or if the individual projects will be over $4 million, okay, we can't do JOCs anymore. So it knocks that out right away. So then when it comes down to, you know, if it's over, you know, if it's kind of in that and it's not written down anywhere, right? It's just kind of rule of thumb. If it's between like 4 and maybe like $10 million, maybe it's low bid. If it's 10 to 50, then you get into CMAR and design build. Maybe if it's over 50, it's probably design build type of a thing. So budget kind of has some aspect to it. Schedule, of course, you know, do we have time for the design? If it's not a super rush, you could do low bid, the traditional way to go about it. One of the things that at the last one, and I'll just mention too, one of the pros of low bid, and Matt hit a lot of them on the last one, was you get the best cost first, right? Is with low bid, right? Because they're bidding on it. So that's always one of the things. One of the downsides is there's very little room for flexibility for change, right? Because they told you what the price was. But so, and then, you know, so back to how do we decide, right? You have time for design. If you do, right, that's good. Is it a complex enough design where you want some design assist? Do you want the contractor's input during design, right? That would lead you towards CMAR or design build. And then, you know, on the scope thing, is it a simple project? If it's run of the mill, like Matt talked about, yeah, low bid's kind of the way to go, right? Could be the easy way to go. Is it repetitive work? If it's repetitive work, maybe it's a JOC, because you could get a good price and just keep doing it over and over again. And really sometimes the question is, do you even need design, right? If you don't need design, well, then you don't go design bid build, right? You could just go through a JOC and just have the contractor do the work. So it's kind of, there isn't a matrix, and maybe we should have one, but usually it's just a conversation between the client department and myself and our procurement team to kind of just come up with what the best option is.
Okay, so I have an idea for you guys, and I just want to throw it out there. I'm envisioning like a straight up board game, like Chutes and Ladders, about how like you can take steps, and then like if your budget is this, you take a chute over that way, and then you kind of progress through like your whole thing. So it'd be way more fun than, you know, an actual matrix. Like that's kind of workish, but I think you guys should create that. I would love to see Chutes and Ladders, APDM style. That's just my idea, though. All right, Matt, do you have anything to add? Anything else on this kind of topic about how you guys decide, how you determine that? All right, so I'm going to throw a new question at you. Do you foresee any changes in the future? So like moving forward, great, we kind of know how we do it now. Do you guys foresee any internal changes to how you decide delivery methods moving forward? Anything in the near or long-term future? Matt?
I don't foresee any huge changes to the way that we decide in the immediate future. I don't believe that we have any projects that are targeted for an alternative delivery method coming up in the near future. I will say that ADOT and AGC have a cooperative committee to look at how those design requirements and those contract templates are laid out to improve them for us as an owner and for industry to help close some of those gaps. So.
Okay, perfect. Matt, do you foresee any changes coming up to how you decide which delivery method to use for your projects?
So maybe Chutes and Ladders, the board game. That was a good idea. Maybe we'll come up with that. I'll get when in all my free time, I'll come up with a board game to help with that. I don't know that. I mean, it seems as though right now, and you know, I know that ADOT is in a similar spot, right? Like we're kind of good at what we do right now as far as the procurement, and we have a pretty good process, both of us, and we get projects out relatively efficiently. Could it be a little faster? Sure. But I mean, sometimes there are just rules built into procurement that allow us or that require us to go a little slower maybe than we want to. But no, I mean, I don't necessarily see any major changes. The city hasn't done, at least to my knowledge, any significant work on P3. Not sure that we're even allowed to. But you know, maybe someday we would be, and there would be that opportunity. But again, that would be kind of a few and far between type of thing. But no, I think with these four that we currently have, this is probably we don't see any need to really change where we're at right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So next question, talk to me about the cost benefit of the delivery method. So Eric, a couple of years ago, you presented at one of my events and you had a very interesting statement that I want to ask you about. You said you had two very similar projects, very, very similar in terms of scope, in terms of location, you know, market conditions, timing, everything else. You were going to test, you know, delivering one by low bid, one versus CMAR. Did you get to do that? And if so, can you tell us what happened?
So that was a great idea, and thank you for remembering that. And yes, we did do that. We are currently still in the middle of that, though, right? So right now we have the designer. We're going to compare, because of the size of the project, we're comparing CMAR with traditional low bid. It was over the $4 million cap, so we couldn't compare it to JOC. But we are in the design of the first project that will be low bid. We started that one sooner because we're trying to bid them at about the same time, right? So we can compare costs in same time periods. I don't know that they'll come out in the same week, but they'll come out within a month or so of each other is kind of the plan right now. But we have selected, so the one design is underway. The second design and CMAR, the second project, the CMAR, both the designer and the contractor have been selected. And they are starting on their work as well. So by this time, probably next year, I'll be able to then say, hey, we looked at them and this is what the cost comparison is. But we are, you know, we'll dissect it every which way, but the projects are exceptionally similar. They're in the same kind of part of town, same type of work. So it should give us a good comparison between the delivery methods, right? And we'll include design costs and all those things, kind of project to project and compare them. So yes, we are doing that, but I don't have any results to deliver quite yet.
I was obviously very excited when you talked about that. I was like, finally, you know, the statements that we read is like, oh yes, the initial cost may be a little higher on like a CMAR, but your end cost should always be lower, you know, like less change orders, less of that. We'll see. That's the line, for lack of a better term. Like that's what everybody says. Matt, do you have any experiences on ADOT, you know, comparing these, you know, initial costs versus final costs across delivery methods that you can bring forward?
I don't. I will say that, you know, for us, it would be rather difficult in my opinion, because I wouldn't expect a CMAR or a design build to end up with the same project that we would have put out to low bid. So just starting with that at a high level, I think it would be very difficult for us to directly compare fairly. You know, we could use parametric estimates for similar projects, you know, say an add a lane on one of the freeways that was this many miles long, and then, you know, different delivery methods. But all in all, those delivery methods typically aren't going to deliver the same project in the end. So it gets pretty difficult to directly compare those end costs. So,
which I think is one of the criticisms of you know, comparing delivery methods, is it's almost impossible. So I applaud Eric, and I'm very excited to see what actually happens. And you need to standardize, you need to remove all variances in order to actually compare initial cost and final cost. You know, same scope, same market conditions, same everything. And that's the tough part, you know, because like Matt said, you usually use the design build on, you know, the large, really complex stuff, whereas a simpler project would always go low bid. So, okay, perfect. Well, we will follow up. Eric, we will invite you back next year, because I am very excited to, again, see that kind of result. All right, next question for you, competencies. So different delivery methods. We've got our CMAR, we've got our JOC, we've got our on-calls, design builds, design bid builds. They require a different skill set, whether it's internal to the public agency or external within the consultants and contracting community. Talk to me about competency. So my example is, you know, low bid, in order to win the job, you just need to have a really good sharp pencil, good estimator, or you need to make a mistake and, you know, forget some scope or something, and you win the job. To be successful on a CMAR or design build requires a completely different skill set. So then you're talking soft skills, you know, interview skills, written proposals, all that good stuff. Talk to me about internal competencies first. So Matt, your groups, whether they're design build, you know, on the owner side, what is the variance? Like, talk to me about the different skill sets that the owner, that ADOT needs to have in order to successfully deliver the alternative delivery methods, our design builds and CMAR type contracts.
So the greatest competency we need is a clear understanding of the delivery process, how that process is going to work. And like I mentioned earlier, those design requirements, you know, sometimes we end up referencing design documents for a design build, for instance. We need a team that has a clear understanding of what the impacts of those references have on the end design for the project. We may end up referencing a design standard that we didn't clearly understand the impact of the project, and the transfer of that knowledge to the project team that's actually delivering the project. So information transfer needs to be one of those core competencies that we're very good at, so that everybody understands the project from start to finish.
Okay. Does that change, you know, if you use CMAR or job order contracting or on-call?
No, it's pretty consistent throughout across all of the methods. We need everyone to be on the same page, Rebecca. So. Okay,
fair enough. Eric, talk to me about internal competencies. What does the city of Phoenix need to do very well, or need to have, you know, in terms of competencies, I don't have a better word for it, in order to deliver these alternative project types, contract types?
Yeah, ironically enough, it's not any different really for the city than it is ADOT, right? We need to be able to understand how the project is going to be delivered, and we have to share information and communication and all of those types of things, right? Being on the same page is important, especially when we have multiple departments working on the same type projects and those types of things. But really the internal staff, really the competencies really just come down to understanding the scope, schedule, and budget of a project, right? And really knowing what do we really want delivered by when and for how much, right? That's really what it comes down to. And it doesn't matter the delivery method in that case. Now, there are some administrative things that are a little different for each of them, but not enough that it, you know, that anybody has to go get a master's on it, right? It's just, yeah, okay, well, this invoice looks a little different. Or when you have design build, like, oh, you're only going to get one invoice, you're not going to get two, right? There's those types of things. But generally, it's just scope. Internal is just understanding your scope, schedule, and your budget.
Okay. All right, talk to me about external competencies. What do you need out of your consultant and contractor for like a design build or a CMAR? Matt, I'm going to come back to you on this one. What changes with those different delivery methods? What do you need out of them?
So specific to something Eric said earlier with CMAR, you know, when to bring in that contractor. Typically for us with CMAR, we're looking for an efficient delivery method, right? We're bringing in that contractor to show us, you know, an equivalent design could be constructed more efficiently at a lower cost, fewer environmental impacts. That's a big deal for us. So a competency that we're looking for is the folks from the contractor that think that way, that say, hey, if you move this over here, it's going to save us 6 months, right? Move it 4 feet this way, you just saved us 6 months on the environmental clearance process. That's the type of competency we're looking for with a lot of these delivery methods. So.
Okay, perfect. Eric, talk to me about competencies you need out of the consultant and contractor community.
Yeah, no, again, Matt did a great job kind of explaining it, right? The whole point of CMAR and design build is utilizing the contractor's expertise and the means and methods and those types of things. So as good as Matt and I were or are at the engineering side of it, contractors are better at building it, right? And they interpret what we meant or what they think we meant, and they try to build it, right? So it really comes down to, you know, the competencies for the contractors for the non-low bid, right? Design, build, CMAR, JOC is really, it's about utilizing their experiences to better the project, right? And knowing that, you know, it's also important to know that those other delivery methods are about relationships more than they are potentially about money. Now, money is still important. Don't go run around saying that, hey, money is not important, because it is. But when you compare it to low bid's about dollars, period. I mean, it ends at, I mean, I guess you're assuming all good contractors are pre-qualified and they meet the qualifications or they're responsive at the end. Low bid's about dollars, right? And not so much about relationships. So it's knowing, you know, CMAR, the competencies are you're hiring them because they can come up with those things, like Matt says, like, hey, move this thing 4 feet and you don't have to worry about that, or it helps with the traffic control, or it helps with, you know, environmental clearances, those types of things. That's the kind of stuff that we're looking for out of these alternate deliveries, right? Where, because the other, from now on the consultant side, what I'm looking for the consultants on all of them are good designs, right? So especially on low bid, and I don't mean good designs, I mean great designs. It is way easier and cheaper to pay a designer or a consultant to rebid something than to get, or to redesign something, than to get caught with a mistake at the contractor level when you're actually building it. So I've told the story before. I was told one time when we were designing a project, we had a design done. We were all good, ready to move forward, but it had some import on the job. The client kindly asked me to redesign it. And I said, well, it's going to cost you X, Y, and Z for us to redesign it. And they said, that's fine. You're cheaper than the dirt. So go start redesigning it. So really, it comes down to, we need consultants to have really buttoned up designs.
Okay, perfect. All right, that kind of ends our prepared questions. I am going to kind of preview the chat. We've answered a few questions, but there have been a couple more that came in, kind of specific on-call contracts, the length of the contract. The question is, are the on-call contracts shortening the time frame? 3 years plus 2 1-year extensions? Has that always been how they are? Are they always kind of set up on this, you know, an initial term plus a year-by-year extension? Or can you explain the timing, Eric?
Yeah, so per Title 34, we could go up to 5 years. We could have 5-year contracts that could actually extend, and the work could extend into a 6th year. But generally at the City of Phoenix, we set them up as 3 plus 2. Sometimes they're 3 plus 1 plus 1. Kind of just depends on the size of the contract and what they've seen in the past. We've gone away from full 5-year contracts because quite frankly, it doesn't provide us with as much escape clause as a 3+2 does, right? So if after 3 years, we're not getting the service we want, or the pricing or the relationship or whatever, it's just easier to let the contract expire and not extend it than to keep it open, right? You don't have to terminate the contract in year 4. You can just not extend it. So we typically go 3+2, is most of them are 3+2. So we evaluate at the 3rd year if we want to extend it or not.
Okay. Matt, do you have any thoughts on the terms of your on-calls? I know you don't use them too much.
Yeah, we don't use them too much. I will say that for our procurement contracts that are set up as on-calls, typically they're 1 year renewable each year up to 5. So, and I believe that's a statutory requirement. So I wouldn't look for us to change that anytime soon.
Just walk on down to the legislature. They're gonna, make whatever edits you need, I'm sure. I'm sure that's an easy process that I've never been involved with. All right, perfect. If you do have any other questions, just note to the audience, if you have any other questions, now would be a fantastic time to submit them, because I have exactly one more I thought of in the past few minutes before we wrap up. So I have heard, just because I talked to a lot of people in the industry, some, I don't know, comments, if you will, just, some anecdotal kind of comments, not related to City of Phoenix and ADOT, but mostly kind of other municipalities, other public entities who get a JOC or an on-call. They get their pool of qualified, contractors, or maybe it's roofers, maybe it's electricians, maybe it's JOCs, general contractors on a job order contract, and then they still have to bid. So it still eats up enormous estimating resources. Do you guys bid individual task assignments within your JOCs or your on-call contracts? Do you guys ever do that? If so, why or why not?
So generally we don't. There have been times that we have, but that is in very kind of rare and unique situations. On the on-calls, it's a little bit easier on the on-calls from the end of the technical registrant side. There's been a couple times where, there is the firm that is, okay, they're the obvious choice because they've done phase 1 or they did the job next to it or whatever. But then there's times where it's like, it's just a brand new project kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So I've kind of gone to the point of where I'm like, all right, pick 3 or 4, client department, pick 3 or 4 that you think could do this work based on the matrix that we have and all that kind of stuff. And then we will contact those 3 or 4 and say, hey, if you are interested, we're looking for a 3-page, it's a very kind of miniaturized kind of mini procurement where it's like, look, we're going to give you a week to give us your understanding and approach of this project. You don't have to tell me about your staff again and how great your, rep projects were and all that. We can go look that up in the main proposal, right? But it gives us the ability to find out who is best suited when there isn't an obvious choice. So on the technical registrant side, we have done that. We probably do that, I don't know, 10 to 15% of the time, not very often. On the contractor side, we tend not to, right? Because the ones that we want to have some type of competition, price-based competition in, we just do 2-step JOCs and we just have them tell us up front what their multiplier would be or what their coefficient would be. But that's on super repetitive work, right? Paving. If you're just going to do mill and overlays, we give you the unit cost and then they tell us if they want, their multiplier to be 1 or 1.1 or 0.95 or whatever, right? So that's where they generally compete on price at that point. But then when it comes time to do the work, everybody's busy enough. Like next, who's next? Next, go start paving roads. So
more of a direct select if you're on a JOC. It's very much a direct select, which is what my understanding of the intent of the contract type is. Again, I've heard some, comments and whatnot, kind of anecdotal, that, once they get on the on-call, they still have to bid it, which is taking up a lot of their estimating resources. Matt, do you have any similar experiences on whether you use direct select on your JOCs or on-calls? I know you don't use them a lot, but I still have to ask.
I don't, and if we're asking, for people to basically estimate twice, it's outside of my realm of knowledge. So I'm not going to say it doesn't happen or that it's never happened. If it does, I don't know about it.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, thank you so much to Matt and Eric. Thank you guys so much for your experiences and your perspective. I think it's really insightful. Again, just being kind of a neutral party. I'm always interested, like, how do you guys figure these things out? All we do is we just see them come across, you know, the bid boards and whatnot. So very, very thankful for your time today and your perspective on all these different delivery methods. And I had Jeff Kramer, you know, city engineer with the city of Yuma, former executive director of ACE. He was on a panel with me, and he kind of was like, you can't call them alternative anymore. They're just mainstream. They're just delivery methods. He goes, stop calling them alternatives. So I've been trying not to use that word too much, because they're very common, very widely used. And then I will say thank you again to our panel. If you'd like to turn your cameras off, your mics off, we have concluded our topics for the day. Francesca, if you'd like to turn your camera back on, or Ignacio, I will just give a plug for our workshop. So 2 weeks from today, November 2nd, I'm hoping it's November 2nd, that's the date that I have stuck in my head. We will have a panel discussion with general contractors, specifically asking them, how do subcontractors and subconsultants secure work specifically on these alternative project delivery methods? So that is our workshop. We will send out the link to register to everybody who has registered today. And with that, I will say thank you so much, and I'll turn it back over to Francesca and Ignacio.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Eric and Matt, for an extremely informative discussion on the pros and cons on different delivery methods. And Rebecca, you stole my shine. I was going to plug the workshop as well. So just make sure everyone registers today for that panel discussion with our invited firms, Hansel Phelps, Kiewit Fan, and Please Flatiron, and F&F. Thank you. Oh, we can't hear you, Ignacio. There you go.
Can you guys hear me now? Yes? Okay. Thanks everyone for coming this morning. This was a jam-packed, lot of information, a lot of stuff that what happens behind closed doors as far as what really happens when it comes to the bidding process. So I actually learned quite a bit today. So we appreciate everybody coming on board this morning, and we're looking forward to the next one. Do we have anything else on the agenda we need to go over, or is that it?
Hey, Ignacio, this is Rebecca. No, I believe that concludes our agenda.
Okay, super. Good. Well, I appreciate everybody coming on board, and a special thanks to the panelists, and we'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.